Hey everybody, hope you had a good holiday. I planned to get Riley finished before all my friends came around for Christmas, but I didn't manage to do that because at the last second, as I often do, I thought, well, I've got, 4 days before they come around. What if I just start my own sculpting presents for them? And so I sculpted Mrs. Sassenach, a nice, cool model of one of her World of Warcraft characters, which was fun because I got to use LEDs and stuff like that. I haven't got to play around with LEDs yet. That and learning how to actually pin models are the two sort of remaining parts of the hobby as recovering Warhammer addicts. Not very recovering, actually, say. But I did manage to get some sculpting done over while I had friends round, so I was rudely just sort of sculpting while they were sitting, hoping that I was making conversation. I was making a little bit of conversation, so this is a recording of that. I've put it at high speed because it took me a long time, and I've hopefully cut out the bits where I just sort of leave it. So I'm putting some details on the armor here, kind of finishing off a lot of the stuff that we already did before. So nothing super new to see here. What I will show, and I'll slow things down a little bit once we get to the rigging, because that is something that I wanted to show off, is, how to rig from a very kind of not very good at it position. Rigging almost always goes wrong for me the first times, and I can't actually remember if it did here, so I'm excited to see. I'm in suspense just like everybody else. Will the rigging actually work properly? I know that it does ultimately, hopefully at least. I haven't actually got a chance to play around with this model yet. I'm hoping to do that, but for the moment now I've got to watch through this whole video and then edit it, which is going to be a little bit more of a tricky thing than the low effort way that I normally do things, where everything's just edited around my voice. This will be similar, but there's got to be a little bit different because I'm not actually talking as I do this. So I'm just sort of watching as we go along. So yeah, picking out some details, trying to make things not completely over detailed. You can see me possibly failing at that a couple of times, but I'm trying to keep some kind of flat, smooth surfaces along with all these kind of decorated surfaces. I think it's looking pretty cool, actually. It's been a little while. I took a little break for myself. We had friends round for Christmas, and that was quite full on, really. It was very nice, and I missed them once they were gone, but it was also the issue with, kind of hosting for Christmas is that you don't really get you don't get a holiday. You have to host and all that, have everybody round, and you don't get to go anywhere. Oh, there's a little freeze. I assume that was actually in reality a 1 hour long pause to talk about some complete nonsense with people behind me. And there'll be a fair amount of kind of unconscious sculpting here going on while I'm talking to people, so I'm hoping I didn't do anything too crazy. I quite like how these shoes turn out, actually. I decided to add some details to the shoes, give them this kind of reptile claw look to go with the pointy toe, adding some scale motifs. Hopefully not going to over detail anything. I'm kind of hoping that because the round scales are a bit similar to some of the round, not embossed, or maybe it is embossed, the patterns that come out on the armor. And then I've got these scales that go in on the headpiece. It looks like I decided not to do them on the armband, which actually I'm not sure of. I might go in and do that again. I quite liked the way that looked. I go with the old fancy studs and flatten them out a bit so they look different from the rounded portions of the rest of the armor, which is not a bad way of doing things. Oh yeah, and then thinking about, do I actually put in scale trousers to make Riley different from Mesmer, but deciding that's a bit too much. I like the bare thighs is the thing. I had to cut out a bit there because I went to look for references of Kazuma Kiryu from Yakuza, as you can kind of see me flicking back and forth there, and I thought, well, if Riley's supposed to be androgynous, I'll look for some female cosplay of Kazuma Kiryu, and that was definitely not stream safe, unfortunately. So you'll be missing out on those, but I'm sure you can imagine. Now doing some details to the face. Once I've gone through this, my next bit of sculpting will probably involve some finalization of the face. So I quite like to make it kind of asymmetrical and pick an expression, that kind of thing. At the moment, we're just sort of adding some shape and some details to there. Adding some muscle definition as well. We don't want a lot of it, but I just want, some kind of difference in texture. If it's completely smooth, it won't look that nice when painted. So this allows there to be a bit of, what do you call it? Definition. I already said it. That's another thing that I need to think about. So Riley's name is Riley Redcrest, which is something that, I just decided before I had any idea what they were like. So there is going to need to be some sort of red crest. And the problem is, our old pal Mesmer, they have a bit of a red motif as well. So I'm going to have to think about it without just making the hair the red, which would be the easiest thing to do. But perhaps I will just do that. Come get me, Miyazaki. Now moving on to the car. I finally get to sculpt this fun dragon head, which, yeah, I should really make just a whole bunch of dinosaur people or something like that. Legally distinct dinosaur people. That would be really fun. I like going back to my inner child to sculpt dinosaurs, to make art of dinosaurs, and remembering it's fun doing a lot of this stuff because you, like all art, you often find that you're using techniques that you developed as a child, and it's like, oh yeah, I remember copying the designs of like the lizard men and trying to learn how their mouths worked as a kid. And it's like, yep, here we go. And getting to put that to good use. And occasionally it'll be like, okay, here's that. I remember drawing a wolf as a child once, and now I can draw a wolf. Oh, now here comes the rigging. Okay. So unfortunately, I didn't record me adding the rig, which I may go back if I can be bothered and add in just to show you what's going on. So this is a simple Rigify rig. The deal with a Rigify rig is it starts out as this quite basic human shape, as you can see, and you can move each individual bone, which is how I started out. But if you convert it into a Rigify rig in Blender, it has built-in inverse kinematics, which is a fancy way of saying, you know, when you move the hand, the rest of the arm moves with it, and the shoulder will move, and all the bones basically are related to each other. And that means that you can make some quite nice natural looking poses that are much harder to do when you're having to individually move each of these bones. And here I'm just fitting the rig to the actual model because my proportions are obviously a little bit different because I'm doing a sort of cartoony kids look. So the limbs are a bit shorter, the body's a bit wider, that kind of thing. You need to make sure that the arms and legs are bent, otherwise it will confuse the rig once you rigify it, as I say, which I will do. I always like those nipple bones. I'm not really sure what they're for, but very important, obviously. And to be honest, this is a little bit of a long and drawn out process, but I figured it was worth showing off. It's also quite important when you're doing these rigs to make sure all the bones are staying connected, which is what I'm trying to do here. A classic mistake for me is disconnecting the spine when I'm moving it around like this. So I'm drag selecting the bones so any hidden bone tips are present, and me as always just looking for options that I can't find, and I'm going to turn it into a Rigify rig. You can see here, save a new file. Now that I'm rigging, I always quite like to have multiple files at different processes. I'll have the rigging phase, I'll have the finalizing phase, I'll have the phase where I start decimating it and making it less lower poly. And that also quite helps if I change something I don't like and I can then go back later. It doesn't help for computer space, but it does help quite a lot to have all these in progress stages. And it can help you figure out when things mystifyingly go wrong. Some of my other more recent projects, one of the characters' butt cheeks just keeps vanishing. And I have no idea why. There's no earthly reason I can figure out why this should happen, but it just does sometimes happen, but not always. And here I'm applying this is the moment where we're all in suspense. Will this actually work? And it did actually work, which is very exciting. So what I've done there is I've used automatic weights to pair the underlying body, not the armor, to the mesh. And that means it will sort of stretch and deform with the rig, sorry, not the mesh. So the underlying body has been parented to the rig using automatic weights. That means it will deform. It's very good for sort of organic stuff. But for the armor, what is much better is to parent it to each individual bone on the rig. And that means it won't deform, but it will follow that. So for example, you know, if I pair the gauntlet to the wrist bone, the gauntlet will follow the wrist, but it won't change shape. Whereas the underlying body, when I bend the wrist, will sort of stretch and deform like you know, skin or organic things does. The laziest way is to just use automatic weights for everything, but it doesn't work with armor very well. I cut out a bit there of me just tabbing back and forth, trying to figure out if I could remember the hotkey for tabbing into pose mode and failing. I know I've set it up, but I can never remember what it is. Because this is quite a tedious process where basically each individual piece of the armor, I then need to select the armor, select the rig, go into pose mode on the rig, parent it to the individual bone, and then go back out into object mode to do that again. And I have most of the key bindings set up, but I can't remember how to get into pose mode. I know that I've set up a radial menu somewhere that I don't know how to access, so that's very exciting. So this process is just picking each individual bit, pairing it to the bone, and it's a bit boring, to be honest. But it's fun once you've got it working. It's quite satisfying yeah, to wiggle the body around. And I'll parent the entire head to that top bone, which doesn't always work out right, but then I'll just end up sort of posing the head by hand if I don't like the way it looks. Okay, and now we're ready to put them in the car. So just sculpting some last minute details in the car. And then once that Riley's in there, I'll be able to sculpt the car around. It looks like I think that's a good idea. So I got rid of the cape because there's just no room for that cape at all. It'd be kind of nice to have something flowing over the back or something like that, but there's enough detail as it is. Plus, you know, Dastardly Mesmer has a cape, so it's good. Then I accidentally put them in a relaxed position like this, and I end up really liking it. So I kind of think that, you know, gives that sort of a swagger, doesn't care, I'm cheating, everything's being done by my car, everything's being done by my dragon wheelchair, I should say, dragon dragster. Now sculpting out the lance and shield. We've done a couple lances now, so kind of used to the shape. I think it looks okay. Trying out some fun stuff for the shield, where I'm trying to give it a kind of, to continue with this sort of like hoplite theme that is mainly from Dragon Ball, because the Saiyan armor is a little bit like hoplite armor. I've given it that kind of rounded bronze Greek shield with a face on it, look. And we'll have a nice dragon face on there. Doing some nice details, so the paint saw pops these out nicely. Thought about decorating the rim, but I think it kind of takes away from, or maybe put some studs on it or something like that. I'm in suspense as well, because I can't really remember what I ended up with here. Yeah, there we are. Great minds think alike. The same great mind thinks alike. And just failing to bevel that edge. This is the sort of Blender shenanigans that we all love. I don't know how to do that, so I give up. Could maybe do that by hand, by flattening the edge with a sculpting tool, if I really want to. And then going back to the lance, I know I was thinking of some crazy elaborate lance thing where there would be like flames coming up from the mouth of the chair and then passing over the lance and kind of coiling around it, which would look cool, but it maybe be a bit much. And sorting out the exhaust pipes a little bit, doing some nice radials and some Boolean differences. Oh, maybe I'd decide against the radials. Oh no, there they are. I'm not sure exhausts actually ever have these holes on them, but they just look right. So there they are. And a little bit of extra detail, a little bit of difference. Clean cut things have a sort of, you know, mechanical look, so it contrasts with the more organic look of a lot of things on this car. Just making sure everything fits right. I think up till then the mud guards on the wheels had been just sort of hovering, so having to find some space to add in that kind of thing. I'm picking out some details on this spoiler. Not very high detail, but I kind of like it. It ends up looking sort of cheesy and old school, like the old hand sculpted things, which is a lot of the reason why I like this style of just sort of messily sculpting things. It evokes the days when you were just sculpting by hand. Now here we get to the lance, putting some flame decals, busting out a couple radials. Quite straightforward ways to add a lot of detail. And it needs the cap as well, because this is a sporting lance, not trying to kill anybody. And putting some nice extra details on the front piece of the lance. I don't know what the heck lance anatomy is, but some more flame decals and with the little dots to kind of tie him into his armor, making a nice little array there for the handle. And then I think that's about as far as I got to. So showing off our nice model so far. I think what I got to do next is make some hands, which is annoying because I think I promised that I wouldn't you bring in some hands that I've previously done, so we'll have a go at that. That'll give us another look at rigging as well, because I'll rig the hand. Then it'll just be about picking out whatever details I can think of, maybe cleaning up the spoiler a little bit, making sure everything works, decimating the thing so it's not a million polygons, and then starting to cut it so that it can actually be put together. And then we'll print it, then we'll paint it. It'll be great. And now I can finally actually get back to sculpting because finished this video. Thanks everybody, I hope you had a good holiday. And please remember to like and subscribe and hit that bell. Ho ho ho! Merry Christmas. Yes, it is I, Santa Claus, taxi. Some people are surprised. Despite my home in the North Pole, I still retain my Greek accent. Ela, legome Saint Nicholas. Google it. I made a deal with the Sassenach to bring wheelchairs for all the children who need them this Christmas, if you could finish the model by Christmas. But unfortunately, it is now 3rd of January. Santa's hands are tied. Now the only one who can bring joy to the children is you, viewer. By donating to Whizz Kidz and receiving a wonderful miniature model with real rolling wheels. I have shown them to my elves, and oh, how they wish they could make something so good. But they are stuck making Labubus and Lego Cybertruck. So please, good viewer, think of the children, and think, will you be naughty or nice? Oh, oh, oh.